right, everyone. Welcome back from lunch. Thank you all for being here. And I'm looking forward to closing us out here. I hope you, like me, feel like this has been a productive meeting, a lot accomplished, a new set of bylaws, a budget that gives us the scope to make some smart investments, along with the flexibility we need to navigate whatever this year is going to bring for us. New board members I'm looking forward to working with, and really over these 3 sessions, some really candid and insightful discussions. My team and I have really started to talk about these big 3 levers that CRL has, where if we look at the sort of total picture of stewardship, sometimes we do it all. We build collections. Sometimes we negotiate with vendors over the market. Sometimes we work with you in collective action. It's been great to get some feedback and some insight from you about that. We're looking forward to folding that all into a strategic planning process to really make sure that you have a real clear value proposition from this organization and that you're excited about some things that we have ahead. Before I get into my formal remarks, I also just want to do another thank you to my team at CRL. Andrea and Molly have done just yeoman-like work making sure that this meeting is ready. Jen obviously has been a critical MC for us throughout the proceedings today. Amy, Lynette, and Kevin for not only running your sessions, but also just being part of planning and visioning and deciding how this whole meeting was going to be. And of course, many of you got to meet Allison as well, who's become an indispensable part of keeping me on track and making sure that this organization is getting what you need. So thank you to all of you, to everyone here at the Hyatt who's helped make this possible. Really, it takes more than the village. It takes like a whole army to get one of these things done. So with that, let me turn to some formal closing remarks for you, and talk to begin with at the beginning just about lessons I've learned to date. You know, as I've gotten into CRL's data, as I've talked with the staff here to understand what CRL really is and what it can be, I find myself, I keep comparing CRL to like a gracious old home. You know, it's full of memories, it's full of hopes for the future, and it's a home that's gone through a very thorough renovation over the last couple of years. So it's a place that's been lived in, it's a place with a great location, it has all these lovely neighbors around it, but we still have to arrange a lot of the furniture, we need to get the paint on the walls, and we need to unpack a few things. And I've heard some really candid concerns about our value proposition and our values, about the changes we've been making, about whether CRL is worth the investment in a difficult budget period, and these are very fair questions. I moved here to take up this job because I believe in what we can build together, and because there are concrete steps ready to be taken. That said, I don't have a big slate of new initiatives I'm going to announce to you today, but I've been at CRL for about 6 months, and in that time, one thing has become very clear to me, and that's that very few people see the whole scope of this organization. And I really mean that along every axis: the depth and diversity of our work, the range of the services we offer, the scope of our member network, and all the possibilities that we have ahead. So that's one of the themes for my remarks today, that once we get the full picture, once we orient ourselves properly to what CRL is, we see just how big the opportunities are. I've spent the last several months getting the full picture, listening, learning, traveling. I did a quick count the other day, and I think I'm into the statistically significant range with about 4 or 5 dozen calls with heads of member libraries, probably that many again with AULs, something like a dozen campus visits to prospective members. So I've been in your conference rooms and your boardrooms. I've walked through your stacks. I have noticed a little overcrowding while I was there, and if there are collections you think might be better handled at the network level, you can call CRL. And I've talked with your librarians in licensing and acquisitions. I've talked with people in cataloging and collections management, and has come up several times today, I've also talked with librarians who are involved in really the direct user services, reference and instruction, and helping us figure out that last mile to really make the collections, the resources we've developed here relevant and available to your users. Of course, I've checked in with some old pals in various conservation labs. And throughout that, I've heard a lot about what makes your work more difficult, what you're excited about, what you think CRL can help with. And that's really the second theme I want to talk about today, is making sure that we're seeing the world through your eyes, that we really understand what it is that you are confronting in your campuses, in your libraries, in your work. It's imperative that we understand the pressures you face, That's across higher education, that's in the scholarly community more broadly, in scholarly communication and publishing, in a complicated political environment. We have to understand that so that the investments we make achieve something meaningful for you by helping you do something to relieve those pressures. It's also really important for CRL to understand what you're excited about. We've talked about open access and open infrastructure. We've talked about emerging technologies. We've talked about how to advance the role of the library in the scholarly enterprise, again, so that our investments do something meaningful for you. Although I've officially had the role here for 6 months, of course, I started thinking about CRL long before then. In fact, Amy Wood reminded me the other day that this is actually the second time I have given a talk at the CRL annual meeting. And the first one was at the At-Risk Symposium in 2016. And I've said investment several times, and so you know I'm serious about that. I looked up the recording, and I'm going to do something dangerous, which is to quote myself, saying, if you put something in shared collections, it's like putting your money in the bank. It's way better there than, this is the part that's going to come back to bite me, way better than putting it in the mattress of the on-campus stacks. And more recently, of course, thinking about CRL, talking with the search committee and with Greg, doing my homework, as I got oriented here, I kept coming to the same conclusion, right? Which is that CRL really is ready to launch, and that I think I will change up my metaphor now, take a drink, and say I think we actually really kind of have a rocket ship on our hands. Brought to you, as I'm required to say at least once a day, by artificial intelligence. Yeah. This is also the place where I'm going to go off script the first time. I was listening to something last night talking about, you know, the craziness of some of our current global leadership thinking about building a habitat on Mars when really we need to think about making college tuition affordable. And it really struck me, too, that this is an important point for us, right? Like, I want CRL to take some moonshots, but there's a real difference between a moonshot and a Mars shot. A moonshot rallies people. It rallies a community for everyone to lend their expertise to something that they can care about, that they can see, that is meaningful. It's not an individual person's particular passion project. And I think that has to be a watchword for us at CRL, that we are bringing people together around common cause. And doing that, we can still think about audacious things, but anytime we're just following one person's particular vision of what would be fascinating, we maybe are going down a wrong road with an organization like this. But that also does bring me to my third topic today, which is where do we go from here? What's ahead for CRL? How do we make the most of this moment? So as we get ready to launch, happy to report we're passing our pre-flight checks, a new global collection structure that's open to all of our members. That's a check. Kevin's got 9 committees lined up. He has several dozens of participants who have already signed up. And critically, no additional dues or fees are being charged for those programs. So a direct savings to many of our members at a time when I know you need it. New collections, check. As Kevin reminded you this morning, we've added actually over $250,000 in area studies materials just in the last 3 or 4 months to the collection, somewhere north of $800,000 for the year. And we've also talked to several members, as you've intuited, about collections that maybe can be transferred to CRL to benefit the whole network. Investment in our licensing program, check. Lynette's been doing the hard work to make sure that program is sustainable, that we keep pushing for better deals, including new working groups on AI usage terms, accessibility compliance standards. And as you've heard, we're thinking about the data analysis and the tools like Unsub that will help us make sure that Neural and the CRL licensing programs keep providing a really best-in-class deal. Collections that are cataloged and ready to go, yep, check. A new ILS with it. 500,000 users for our online open access materials from all around the world, check. Contingency planning for a volatile political and economic landscape, check. We had a really robust conversation at the board meeting on Monday. I will probably have to revisit all of that as soon as I look at the newspaper, but we're on top of it. Bridge year support for the shared print partnership, thermal scan of the building, systems migration, subscriptions, scanners, check, right? And all that baseline capability you have, it's documented in the prospectus we released this month. That document, in essence, is a pre-flight checklist, right? There's a lot there, and I really want to emphasize that, like, there's a lot here, right? CRL has tremendous scope. It has real depth. It has real diversity of services. If you want to take a printout copy home with you, by all means do. I hope you'll spend some time with it. We've tried to be careful to break it up into digestible 1 or 2 page chunks so that you have a really strong summary of CRL as it is today. That document captures a lot of what I've learned, and it signals where we're headed. But the most important message there is that CRL is yours. We chose to call it a prospectus because that's what you issue to investors. And we want you to all see yourselves as shareholders and co-investors in this organization. We want you to engage with CRL as a joint venture that exists to accomplish your shared goals. And that's a metaphor I want you to continue to push on and to push me on. Corporations form joint ventures sometimes to pursue new prospects when there's a benefit for many of them and it's smarter to share the cost. That's something CRL can do. Sometimes corporations join a joint venture when there's an essential service that they all need, but it does not give any one of them a competitive advantage. Again, that is something that CRL is good for. If you think of CRL only as a content subscription, only as a licensing service, a shared print data registry, none of those things are wrong. That's not incorrect, but I think you miss the real value of what you have in this organization. Working with my team to build that prospectus was really reassuring to me for 2 reasons. One was just that I recognized something that was familiar to me from the work I've done in preservation. And the second, as I've gotten deeper into the data we have and the conversations with you, I really see ways that the work we do in our profession and the way CRL can help us do that have a role to play and can be part of the solution to the larger problem we've talked about across the last 2 days, which is how we find our role in restoring some of the equilibrium we need in our culture and why libraries are essential to that work. To start with preservation, of course, I find that very comforting because preservation has been the through line of my career, but more precisely, that's preservation as a function of the organization. So not just conservation treatments and environmental controls, not just material science and reformatting programs, but really the work of making sure that the past has a future because you've embedded it in your policy, in your budgets, in your working documents. That's preservation as collections logistics and moving things to the right place at the right time and having the right structures around them. There's something that stewardship organizations all face that I think of as the caretaker's dilemma, right? Which is that it's one specific version of this problem of the urgent overcoming the important, right? And it's the dilemma of being responsible for something that's very precious and handing that treasure off to someone else, recognizing that there is a risk in doing that, that there's some degree of control that we're losing when we do that, and yet knowing if we don't take that risk, and crucially, if we don't take that risk in the present, the past recedes, the present loses meaning, and the future is impoverished. In very blunt terms, if preservation doesn't help the library meet its purposes today, there will not be an investment in preservation. And I think the same goes for CRL. If we're not solving present tense problems for our members, there won't be an investment here either. When we do get that balance right, when we connect up the past and the present and the future in a way that's practical and real and starts a cycle of care, that's when organizations like CRL, organizations like all of you, transform essential infrastructure into really actual durable social fabric. That's a real engine of progress. And I want to give you an example from my experience of what that can look like. So I had the opportunity to work in Liberia on 2 occasions. The first time was just during the ceasefire in the early 2000s. And I was part of a team that was working to recover cultural materials and records that had been threatened by the conflict. Let me back up here. There's not much to say, right, that the pictures don't convey. The level of damage, what we were dealing with, really was apocalyptic. These are presidential papers, national archives, the ethnic folklore recordings of Bai Timor, a folklorist. Along the way, we found a couple of safes that had been looted from CINDRA, the Center for National Documents, Records, and Archives. People had thought that these might contain cash. They didn't, and they held something actually much more valuable, which was the Constitution and Declaration of Independence for Liberia. And that was my second trip, was to help bring those documents back into public life. We had an expedition as part of International Right to Know Day. We did records management training for civil servants. We did capacity building workshops for the archive staff. We put those materials on exhibition. This is what we started with. This is Sindra post-conflict. That room is what we, in a week, turned into a gallery, processed and rehoused collections. And at the end of that, we had a week where the archives was open. School groups came in. It was open to the public. People got to see the founding documents of their nation. They got to see a record of what had happened and transpired in Liberia over decades. And they got to recognize there was an organization responsible for keeping those records and for making them available. Liberia still faces tremendous challenges, right? But it faces tremendous challenges with a more functional civil society, with a more functional national archives. Liberia today has fractious elections. It has some Grammy-winning artists. It has plenty of civil discord. It has very, very passionate football matches. It sounds like some other countries we may know. But Liberia, although there are no real superheroes in this story, although the ending is complicated and still ongoing, libraries and archives were a really important part of it, right? That there are people in Liberia who are growing up with a sense of what rule of law can be and an understanding of why libraries and archives matter in that. And it's a real reminder to all of us, and I know we're a humble profession, we don't often like to hear things like this, but really society cannot be rebuilt without us. As I say that, let me also emphasize my training is in library science, not political science. I'm president of CRL, not president of anything else, and I'm not here to give a big civics lesson to everybody. But I am here to say that civil society and rule of law depends on records and it depends on cultural identity. And I'm here to say that's the business of libraries in the most literal way, and I think that collective efforts like CRL are a really crucial tool for doing that business well. As we've talked about, Center for Research Libraries is 76 years old now, and with slightly modernized language, these are our founding purposes from 1949, and I really think they still resonate. We were created to extend and complement the collecting power of research libraries. That's still what we do. The methods have changed, the scales changed, the world around us has changed, but that core function, that really holds steady. And this year we recommitted to those founding principles. The governance task force and the board adopted a formal mission statement, I think the first in CRL's history, and a set of organizational values to guide our work. And to me, this is CRL in its most fundamental form. It is a working library built by and for other working libraries. It's our distinctive value proposition. I don't know of another organization with this same combination of breadth, of independence, and of openness, open to any library that shares our goals, independent from commercial or governmental control, owned and governed by you, our members. And these values really articulate how we go about doing that work. They provide a reference point when we make choices, when we weigh trade-offs, when we commit to action. And they reflect a lot of what I've heard from you, that CRL has to remain grounded in the realities of working research libraries. Because we're a library just like our members, we also have a built-in assurance that our investments and our initiatives are going to be practical and they're going to be relevant. I think our identity as a collections and access institution is a real fundamental reason that CRL can claim some credibility. And that's the core identity that I'm really committed to building the future of CRL on. Over the last 2 days, we have heard an incredible range of ideas for how CRL can support and amplify our collective work. I've heard dozens more in conversations with member and staff. And over the coming year, I'm really looking forward to building a strategic plan that gives structures to those ideas, that shows you very clearly where we're investing, and gives you the ability to see the value of what you have here. And as we do that over and over again, we'll be returning to these core principles to make sure that we're connected to our touchstones. But I think we also have to be very honest about the world we're doing that in. And in normal times, I think these foundational value propositions, those might be enough. That mission statement, those 3 values, that's enough, but these are not normal times. These are times when values are under threat, when the normal order is fractured, and it's the second half of our values statement, I think, that really speaks to the work that we have to do ahead. And so earlier I talked about recognizing this caretaker's dilemma in CRL, and that reassures me. That's a problem I know. It's a problem that has solutions. But I also see CRL and our sector more broadly facing a larger dilemma, and that's the same dilemma that strikes at the core of all of our societies. Over the years, I've had the privilege, and I don't mean the word lightly here, a real privilege of working on cultural heritage protection with people across the spectrum, senior ranks of the military and intelligence services, diplomats, policymakers, law enforcement, experts from our own sector. And it's an axiom in that field that if you can preserve and protect cultural heritage, you stabilize communities. You signal safety, you signal order, and you make it possible to build something lasting. It's also an axiom in that field that the inverse is true. If you want to destabilize a society, if you want to create discord, one of the first things you do is destroy its records and cultural materials. So as our society confronts questions about equity, about inclusion, about identity, as we re-examine all of our monuments and our narratives, I really watched with a strange mix of pride, fear, and hope over the last several years. Real pride because we are grappling with these things, and that we is not an abstraction. This profession is grappling with these things. CRL wrote these value statements because CRL was reflecting on itself during a period when it was critical to really think about values. I've also watched with some fear because I know what happens when people feel like their culture is stripped away. And I've watched with some fear because even when identity is built on ideas and icons that stand for something false or malevolent, whether it's moral or immoral, people need an identity. And when people feel unmoored, they become really susceptible to ideologies and extremism. I've also had a measure of hope, though, because I think this is a moment where we can embrace a role in this problem and really turn that into some opportunities. The repair and rebuilding that we have to do is a job for education, it's a job for study, it's a job for dialogue, and the tools of that repair, texts and images and narratives and communities, those are very squarely the domain of libraries. That's where we work. We're the institutions that are tasked with preserving the full record and making sure that it's available for everyone. We are in a position to bring about dialogue. We're in a position to be in the same places as the people who need to talk, and we're in a position to record who we are, what we are doing, and where we are now. We're institutions, things that last from generation to generation, that I think are uniquely suited to this moment when we need to bring identity and honesty together. And I said earlier, again, that my training is library science, not political science. I'm here to help care for the record and to help libraries do that. And I'm also crucially aware that CRL doesn't face these challenges in the same way that you, our members, do. We don't have a campus with faculty and students. We're not under direct threat. And again, that's why I think that it's crucial that CRL's value statement extends further than just how to be a good preservation organization, and that we really think about where we are positioning ourselves in the community and what our job is in relationship to you. I think it's also really important that this year we've started to actually really have some tests of these values, right? These things have been at stake as we worked on sunsetting the AMPs and standing up global collections committees. They've been at stake as we work with members on financial difficulties on their individual campuses, as we work on adjusting neural fees, as we talk to our colleagues about what we can and can't do, should or shouldn't do to support them as they work within their own political jurisdictions. And each time we do that, we have to ask ourselves, what are our values? Are we in alignment with them? Are we acting with appropriate integrity and foresight? And I'm very grateful for that. I will say also my pharmacist is, their sales of antacids have been strong over the last several months. But I'm genuinely grateful for these tests because I also kind of know there are more real challenges ahead, and there are probably some larger challenges ahead. And doing this work, going through the work of putting our values into practice, figuring out how to do that correctly and effectively, that's how we make sure we're ready for what's going to come next. And as we think about the next 100 days, the 1,000 after that, I really have started reading our mission and our vision and our values in a different way, right? And I hear some other things in these words. And I keep coming back to this phrase about a world in which, right? Which was not the most prominent word we discussed in drafting the values statement. But I start really seeing that as an important part of the charge and the responsibility. And part of that is maybe because in my career, there have been sort of two constant factors you have to deal with. One of those is people, and one of those is the weather, and what they have in common is you have no control over either of them. And so as I think about what is ahead, I really think, though, about how we have a chance to start building some things back. We have some chance to start building some new things, and we can make some choices about that. And this is this is the second area where I promised you I was going to go off script, because I was really inspired by what Heather said about catalyzing community. And I will say one of the other lessons I learned doing this kind of work, mucking out archives in subtropical basements or dealing with large-scale preservation problems, you develop a little gallows humor. You find a way to get through. But I will say something that those groups, the people I worked with who were successful at that, they also learned how to take a victory lap. The Conservation Department Christmas party, it's the best Christmas party, right? International Right to Know Day, they had an actual brass band parade for us, right? And I think that's something that I hope this community will think about as well, and that I hope I bring a little to you is just the sense that we can celebrate ourselves. Even with all the pressures we're under, my gosh, the work you have talked about over the last several days, it's truly incredible. I hear you talk about how you work with your staff and your leadership team and your campus. I hear what you do at your libraries, and this is a room that has a magnificent group of people with a great deal to be proud of. And I think it's really important as we go through whatever is coming the next few years. I hope that coming to CRL always has a little bit of a celebration attached to it. You're part of a great club, and you're part of a club of people who care about each other. That's my third theme, is that collectively then, we have just some extraordinary resources to build with. This membership, this network, it has a breadth and scope that is unlike anything else. I loved Jennifer's phrase that it's not big or small, deeper or lower, it's across, right, that we have here at CRL. And I see all these people who are building the future of our profession. You run university presses and publish scholarly journals. You're setting the direction for infrastructure, for discovery, for data access, for management. Earlier, I divided that budget line we just approved by 0.0052. And I'm here to remind you that we collectively have $1.3 billion in purchasing power. We have real leverage, right? Even with some austerity, there's tremendous strength in this collective. And we're also often our own customers, right? Our university presses produce many of the works we buy. We build much of the infrastructure we use. We have a real base of influence that we can wield as well. And I know this is not news. You're already doing it, right? Northwestern is prototyping an AI system that creates a natural language interface to its special collections. I know they're not alone. You're already launching, all of you, the future of our work. Alberta has been advancing an open infrastructure framework. They're not alone in that. We're already transforming the tools of our profession. I was looking at the Claremont College's Clearwater project, right, turning these sources into research data. University of Maryland has the LENA initiative that's helping libraries understand and meet the needs of immigrant communities, building trust, not just access. So all of us, all of this room, we're shaping what's possible in scholarship. We're showing how the library is a distinctive part of the scholarly enterprise, not just the handmaiden or the servant to a larger mission, but really a thing of its own that has value in the scholarly world, something that really stands alongside and as a valuable partner with other civil society organizations. And crucially, for understanding what CRL is, I see you doing that with communities that only you can serve. And finding ways to help you do more of that and to get things out of your way so that you can focus on those distinctive services, I think is a real clarion call for how CRL tests whether its work is valuable to you. And so when I look around this room, I see people who have ideas and resources that we need to build a better future. And I know that even when I talk about resources, less and restricted are the words that come to mind. I also want to remind you that pressures like that don't just constrain us, they also authorize us. Crises always bring some permission with them. Scarcity and pressure are going to force change, but they also give us permission to change. And I hope all of you feel some sense of that agency and are able to take some of that authority. Because as you do, as you see yourselves as an empowered actor, I hope you're also going to look again at CRL and ask what you want from this joint venture that we have. I hope you'll think of CRL as a corporation you hold equity in and ask what you want this corporation to accomplish for you. I think that's the real power of this community. That's what really makes this organization worth building. So I hope Like I said, it's important to take a victory lap. I hope you get some sense of my confidence and my enthusiasm. I hope you're seeing this not just as a service you can subscribe to, but as this powerful means you have of doing work that ought to be shared across the profession, again, so you can focus on what matters most to your communities. But I do want to leave you with some few concrete ideas. And as I said, I don't have a splashy initiative to launch today, but my gosh, it is not for lack of options and ideas. Talking with you, working with my team over the last several months, we've already identified so many ways that we can put CRL's capabilities to work. We can do that to bring advocacy and collective action deeper into our licensing program so that we can negotiate the future deals, not just the terms we need this year, and to signal to the market the pressure that we're capable of bringing to bear. We can develop a cooperative network to address cataloging backlogs, and we can align expertise with needs across the membership. In fact, we're getting ready to run a computer simulation of that this summer so that we can take a real concrete step towards making that a reality and making collective action to bring resources available a reality for this membership. We can build on our existing tools and some of our long-standing experience, things like paper database and the print archive network. And we can develop the systems and the business intelligence to start moving shared print from regional, time-bound initiatives to a sustainable, coordinated project across the continent. We're capable of investing in open infrastructure. In fact, we've already done so with the TIND ILS, and we can look at ways to make sure that every dollar you're putting into CRL buys you those second-order benefits alongside it. We can put our collection development principles into action. We can do that across every format and genre to really start working on global access to information. We can be a safe harbor, so we can take that question of will it be there and will it be saved off the table, and you can focus more on putting those collections into action. We've talked a lot about creating opportunities for members to connect and doing that through the real work that is going to have impact and offer people meaningful professional growth. As I said, we're building a strategic plan to make all of this real. We're grounding that in your perspectives and your ideas. We're making sure it's informed by our values. And we're going to make sure that there are real solutions to those problems. But as I talk about all that, I also just want to remind you, this is the third off-script moment, right? We've heard a couple of times, it's worth asking if we didn't have this, what would it cost us to buy it? What would it cost us to build it? CRL's collection budget, for most of our members, it's 15 to 30 times their member dues that we're able to invest in collections. And it gets really valuable for you if you send someone to a GCC or send someone to the CSPC to take a role in shaping it. That's an option that's open to all of you. Our use of collections, our use of materials, for less than a cost of an FTE, you have access to an incredible well of resources and knowledge. And I think it's really important that we reflect on how we make sure that you are getting the most out of that value proposition by understanding CRL, again, as an investment that if you were not making it, you might have to make some other way and some other more difficult and costly way. And we're here to work with you on that. But it's been really galvanizing for me to see so many people landing on this same recognition that the more you see CRL as your tool and your investment, the more its value comes back to you. And let me leave you then with just two thoughts, right? And the first is just that libraries are how we make a gift out of the past and give it to the present, and that cycle of care, that's crucially important. It strengthens communities, it enriches lives. What we do really matters. The continuity of knowledge and culture, that's not a luxury for settled times, that's the actual foundation of society. And the second thought is that we have a role in that. We get to have some responsibilities in that we're people in this place and time who get to decide how that's going to be done. I really don't see any reason the future shouldn't look back at the research library community in the late 2020s and say that was extraordinary. They rewrote the script, they changed the way we do things. I know many of you, I know your intelligence, I know your creativity, and I know your capability. I know that very often the only thing holding you back is that something urgent crowded out something important, or that something necessary stole some time from something that could be revolutionary. And CRL is here to be on your side. We're here to make sure that the things that can be shared and lifted from everybody get lifted. We're here to extend the value of your resources. Next year, we're going to invest over $1.2 million in collections. Our licensing team is going to coordinate the talent and power of this network to move the market. So we're here to clear obstacles. We're here to share the work. We're here to connect advocates and to sustain the resources we need to fulfill our purposes. So I think this organization has a great future. Every member who is a part of it brings this project more fuel to fly, and I'm really glad that you're all of a part of it. So with that, let me say thank you, and I appreciate you all taking the time to be here with us in Chicago.